Have you ever walked into a public restroom at a bustling Target, a crowded interstate gas station, or maybe while waiting for a connecting flight at O'Hare Airport and found yourself staring down at that massive awkward gap between the stall door and the floor? I mean, let's be brutally honest here. Your privacy in that moment is basically non-existent. You look to your left, you look to your right, and you can literally see the sneakers of the guy in the next stall over, just doing his business. It is a highly stressful, totally vulnerable situation, right? Think about the sheer contrast for a second. The bathroom in your own house is a literal fortress. It is your ultimate personal sanctuary. It is perfectly sealed from the ceiling right down to the floorboards. No sound escapes, no light leaks in from the hallway, not even a tiny draft of cold air can get through. So why on earth are public restrooms where you are surrounded by total, unpredictable strangers left so ridiculously wide open? Welcome to Night Question. If you are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a video. Let us rewind the clock back to the early 20th century. With the massive rise of modern capitalism and the booming American Industrial Revolution, people abandoned their quiet, isolated farming lives. They flooded into heavily crowded, fast-paced cities like Chicago, Detroit, and New York. Suddenly, it became completely normal for the average factory worker to spend well over 12 to 14 hours a day entirely away from their house. And that massive societal shift created a very basic, very urgent human logistical problem. Where do these millions of exhausted workers go when nature inevitably calls? This absolute biological necessity gave birth to the modern public restroom in city streets, towering corporate buildings, and massive shopping centers. Initially, Victorian-era architects approached this new challenge with a very rigid, modesty-first mindset. They designed these public facilities just like residential bathrooms. They installed heavy, solid oak doors reaching from the high ceiling right down to the tile floor, complete with heavy-duty metal deadbolts. They wanted to give the user absolute, uncompromising privacy. But reality, as it often does, had a very different, much darker plan. By creating these impenetrable little fortresses, designers accidentally provided the absolute perfect safe haven for illicit and illegal activities. During the mid to late 20th century, the United States was dealing with severe waves of drug epidemics. For someone struggling with heavy addiction, a fully sealed, locking public bathroom stall was the absolute perfect place to consume drugs safely, completely out of sight from the law. Public restrooms in major cities rapidly transformed into dangerous, unchecked hotspots for the illicit drug trade. Furthermore, security guards and local police officers could not simply kick down a heavy wooden door on a whim. It is a bathroom, which is a highly sensitive and legally protected space under privacy laws. You need serious probable cause to breach it. And honestly, it wasn't just illegal substances causing headaches. Desperate, homeless individuals would lock themselves inside these secure stalls to escape the freezing, brutal winter temperatures of the Northeast, sleeping safely and undisturbed for hours on end. Some opportunistic criminals would even lock the door, completely strip the plumbing with wrenches, and steal the heavy brass faucets and copper pipes to sell at local scrap metal yards. Absolute privacy had literally morphed into a dangerous weapon against the public. The entire philosophy of bathroom architecture needed a radical, immediate redesign. Enter the legendary American architect Frank Lloyd Wright. In 1903, while designing the iconic Larkin Administration Building in Buffalo, New York, Wright pioneered a brand new, revolutionary concept, the suspended partition. Wright deliberately elevated the walls and the doors about 12 inches off the floor. His primary motivation for this, however, was actually strictly about sanitation. Public restrooms see hundreds, sometimes thousands of people every single day. The sheer amount of bacteria, moisture, and biological grime that accumulates is truly terrifying. If a heavy wooden door goes all the way to the floor, it traps dirty water, wet paper towels, and absolute filth in those tight, dark corners. A janitor would have to open every single heavy door, step inside the cramped space, and meticulously scrub the floor by hand. It is backbreaking, miserable work that wastes countless hours. But with the doors raised, a janitor can just splash heavy-duty bleach and soapy water on the tile and aggressively mop under all the stalls at the exact same time. They can literally slide a mop under a locked door. It was a total, absolute game changer for public hygiene. While Wright's original goal was cleanliness, massive corporate investors and commercial real estate developers quickly realized this design was an absolute financial goldmine. If you look at this from a pure business perspective, that empty foot of space at the bottom saves a ridiculous amount of money. First, think about the raw material. When you chop 12 to 18 inches off every single door in a massive massive commercial skyscraper or a sprawling shopping mall, you save thousands of pounds of processed wood, aluminum, and heavy plastic. Then there is the brutal daily wear and tear. Bathroom doors get kicked, punched, leaned on, and slammed constantly. A shorter, significantly lighter door puts far less physical stress on the metal hinges and the locking hardware, meaning they last years longer without needing expensive maintenance. Plus, keeping the wood elevated away from the daily puddles of mop water prevents it from swelling up, warping, and rotting out at the base. But the absolute biggest financial win of all is standardization. Floors in large commercial buildings are rarely perfectly level. They are deliberately sloped toward the central drains so water doesn't pool. If you use a full floor-to-ceiling door, a carpenter has to custom cut the bottom of every single door to match the exact specific slope of that particular tile floor. With a massive gap at the bottom, you just buy 1,000 identical standard-sized doors from a factory, mount them at a set height, and the job is done. Installation time and labor costs are completely cut in half. Secondly, this highly economic design magically solved the massive urban crime wave problem we talked about earlier. Building security guards or store managers could now do a quick, discreet sweep of the room just by glancing at the floor. They could instantly see if there were, suspiciously, 2 pairs of shoes standing in one stall. If someone lit up a cigarette or something worse, the smoke would drift out immediately through the top and bottom. If a pair of boots had not moved a single inch for over an hour, they knew someone was likely sleeping or unconscious inside. This actually fundamentally changes human psychology. When you walk into a stall and you know your shoes are perfectly visible to anyone walking by the sinks, your entire mental state shifts. The subconscious desire to vandalize the walls with a Sharpie or do anything shady drops by about 90%. That comforting blanket of absolute secrecy is just entirely gone. You are given exactly enough visual cover to do your business, but you are left exposed just enough to guarantee you are not doing anything else. There is also a fascinating, slightly evil psychological trick at play here. Behavioral psychologists note that these gap-filled stalls make us subconsciously anxious and uncomfortable. Seeing the shifting shadows of people walking past and hearing the echo of every footstep on the tile creates a mild sense of urgency in your brain. It triggers a primal desire to finish your vulnerable mission quickly and get out of there. And for a high-traffic public facility, that is exactly what the property owners want. They want high turnover. You are not supposed to camp out, get comfortable, and scroll through social media for 30 minutes. The subtle environmental anxiety pushes people out the door faster. Then there's the extremely crucial, often ignored issue of ventilation. Imagine a tiny 3x3 foot box, completely sealed tight, and someone just walked out after a brutal, fast food-induced stomachache. The odors would be permanently trapped inside that chamber. The poor guy next in line would literally suffocate. The massive gaps at the bottom, combined with the open space at the top, create a powerful natural chimney effect. Fresh, cooler air sweeps in aggressively from the bottom, pushing the hot, foul air straight up toward the massive industrial ceiling exhaust fans. The air cycles out in seconds instead of hours. Finally, we absolutely have to talk about personal health and safety. A public restroom is a surprisingly common location for sudden, catastrophic medical emergencies. An elderly gentleman could walk into a diner restroom, lock the heavy deadbolt, and suddenly suffer a severe heart attack, collapsing onto the hard tile. If the door went from the floor to the ceiling, hours could easily pass before anyone even suspected a serious problem, and rescuing him would be a nightmare. Paramedics would require heavy breaching tools or axes to smash the solid door down, wasting precious minutes and potentially injuring the victim inside with flying debris. With the open bottom design, anyone simply washing their hands will immediately spot a person collapsed on the floor. First responders can assess the medical situation instantly upon walking in. And because the doors are elevated and relatively flimsy, an EMT can easily just slide right underneath the gap to pop the latch from the inside. Countless American lives have been saved simply because someone's shoes were visible at a strange, unnatural angle. So, because of all these massive overlapping benefits, superior sanitation, raw economics, building security, behavioral psychology, and life-saving safety, these short doors became the absolute, unquestioned gold standard in American architecture. They were officially patented way back in 1918, and eventually, this brilliant industrial design was exported across the entire globe. All so we can sit in a public stall, doing our business, with our favorite sneakers fully on display for the rest of the world to see. And that is a wrap for today. For everyone who made it all the way down to this exact point in the video, you guys are the absolute best, and you are the reason we keep making these. Drop a quick like before you head out so we can see exactly how many of you stuck around to the very end. And hey, if you have one of those random random, mind-bending questions that keeps you staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, drop it in the comments below, and we might just answer it in the next one. Peace.